You're still watching The Final Word this evening, and we are, of course, revisiting our top story, the long-standing real estate bill that was passed in the Rajya Sabha this evening. Now, that, of course, is quite a huge boost for home buyers. It also has a lot of significance for developers as well. Joining us now on the show is a developer that is, of course, Niranjan Hiranandani, that's the CMD of the Hiranandani Group. Welcome to the show, Mr. Hiranandani. My first question really to you is, what is your first takeaway from the fact that the Parliament has now cleared a long-standing demand for the real estate regulator to be put in place? And would you say that the primary goal really would be to get greater transparency into the sector itself?
I think the most important thing was a lack of transparency in the industry. The consumer was hankering for it. The government was interested to do it. And I think the industry people who are working straight wanted it also. So I think there's a positive sign in terms of introduction of the bill, which provides transparency. There are several other things which we need to incorporate in order to see that this transparency actually fructifies in providing housing for all. We have to move down that path, because the housing regulatory bill is not a panacea and solution for all problems. It's a beginning. It's a vehicle. It can be used positively. It can be used negatively. So I think we hope that the government will use it positively.
I find it interesting that you're saying that there are positives and negatives. Let's just concentrate on what kind of negatives that exist from a developer's standpoint, especially. On what counts do you think you would be wary of with the regulator coming in now?
I think the negative part of it is that the regulator will be not a person who's proactive to the industry, but is used for the extortion or corruption. So that could be something in the case of urban land ceiling, where actually the regulator, the Urban Land Ceiling Authorities, misused their authority, and hence it went into a spin wherein actually the land prices, instead of coming down, went up. And we ultimately had to scrap that act, though it was a very, very good vehicle, analogous to what we are bringing in today. So when a vehicle is put into a legislation is put, a regulator is put, if we use it positively, I'm sure we will have a proactive stance. Number two, there is an issue which is not covered by the legislation, which is the approvals of building plans. Today, earlier building plans used to be sanctioned in 3 to 4 months. Today, it takes 2 to 3 years, including environmental clearance. Now, if the regulator is not able to push these clearances early, and you can only blame the developer for delays, then I think it will be a one-sided regulator, which doesn't make sense. So I think if the regulator is used to help us to get a one-window clearance faster, along with controlling the developers, which is imperative and part of the law, I think we could achieve the objective of the Prime Minister for housing for all.
Okay, Mr. Hiranandani, let me ask you this, because one of the primary goals of the government was to create housing for all. How much of a takeoff do you see on account of the creation of a regulator per se?
I think the Prime Minister is clear. I think Mr. Venkaiah Naidu is clear. And in Mumbai, I think Mr. Devendra Fadnavis is very clear. I think their objective is very clear, that they want to get housing for all. But remember one thing, 3 people don't make the entire government. And the challenge is going to be as to how these regulators actually function. And in the past, we've had very bad experiences with earlier regulators under the urban land ceiling, and also the permissions of various authorities. So we don't need the regulator to be one more impediment. What we would like them to be is a catalyst to work faster, better, quicker. And if that happens, then the developer community will actually be charged with a positive sign. And I don't think there's going to be a different sort of wedge between the two. But of course, the biggest is that there will be transparency and more transparency.
Right. Well, yes, but I sense a certain cautiousness in your approach towards the creation of a regulator, Mr. Hiranandani. If I can ask you, apart from that single window clearance that you hope the regulator is going to be able to effect, do you also see the possibility of a consolidation? Because there is a surfeit of laws out there that govern real estate deals, and to that extent, perhaps if that does happen, if that consolidation does happen, will it lower the amount of litigation that we have in this space right now?
Yes and no, because we already have a consumer courts which are operating. This obviously is going to be supplementing the consumer courts. So there are actually now two authorities which will handle these issues. One, the regulator, and the second is the consumer court. So we'll have to see which is superior and subservient to the other. So I think we will have to rationalize those issues as they come by, and the states will have to take a decision on that as it happens.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hiranandani. It was such a pleasure having you right here on The Final Word. In fact, we have been speaking to a host of